You tell me. I mean, we sitting here with one of, I would say, the nation's most, I would call him polished and committed to just showing black men.
Isn't that polished?
Oh yeah.
Describe that.
I'm sorry, like London doesn't play around. He don't play any games when it comes to presentation. But more importantly,
neither do you.
I don't. I'm trying to keep up.
Thank you.
But what I do want to say that, London, it's good to have an opportunity to have a conversation with you. We've been able to know you for quite some time now, and it's good to be able to sit down and just have a real men, real talk conversation with you as a black leader in this country that is passionate about showing brothers that there is another way. I recall we were doing a real men, real talk back in LA, and I'll never forget this. You cracked me up because you was unapologetic about wearing Prada shoes. And you said, I work hard to get to these
Prada shoes.
Yeah.
Let's really emphasize that. Prada.
And so he let us know that, listen, I worked my tail off to get to this space. But I want to talk to you about that. So what did the work really look like? And let's talk about where you must have come from in order for you to really feel like, no, this is my celebratory moment or gift to myself to say, hey, great job, keep going.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and it's funny at the same time because when I'm looking at you and JG and you're showing up in your Ferragamos and he's coming up in there with his Louis Vuittons, I was like,
excuse
I'm
me,
coming out there.
These are Fendi.
Oh.
and no, I want to
Not today. Not today.
Yeah.
Not talk about today.
Yeah.
But I realized I was coming out to LA and I was like, what I need to dig in my closet and bring out. But in all seriousness, I come from very humble beginnings. And so, growing up, 3 boys, mom and dad in the household, we weren't one of those families that had a silver spoon in our mouth. So we had to work hard to get everything. And so that's what we were taught from a very early age. And so, I learned that there would be sacrifices along the way. And so in order to get to where I wanted to go, I had to work for it. And so that was something that my parents instilled in us. And so we started with newspaper routes and, working at places like Chuck E. Cheese and all that. None of that stuff was off the table, but we also learned that the value of a dollar. And so that, we had to put away things and save for the rainy day, but also save for what your long-term goals were. So I knew at an early age that I would work hard and have to, make sure that the future that I wanted, I would have to put a plan in place. And so we always talked about short-term, long-term goals, and how do you achieve them throughout your life is really how you create your plan to get there, and then celebrate your successes along the way. So we laugh and joke about the Prada shoes, and so that not necessarily saying that was a success point, but it just shows you that if you want something, if you work hard, you're gonna have a history of points where you can go back and say, I made it here, I didn't get there yet, but I'm on a journey and a cycle to get me there. And so that's what I feel whenever I put on the Prada shoes, is that it wasn't the Prada shoes. It was just that it was something I said I wanted. I didn't go out and get it right away. It wasn't like one of those impulsive type things, but it just taught me, whether it's the shoes, the house, or achieving goals or helping others, that you have to set a goal and start somewhere.
Well, Kenny, you usually start this out. You must be excited because London's here.
What's that?
You usually start this out talking about why we having this conversation. So I think that,
Yeah, I got a little excited. I'm sorry.
You was like,
I just jumped right into the conversation.
You saw London. You went right there.
Hey, he's cold-blooded, So
Talk about why did we do this conversation?
Well, this conversation is so important in the black community. I think that to see, people look at JG and I, and they're always intrigued, or they're laughing, and they're like, man, I love the chemistry between you two. But we have decided to make a commitment to providing a platform, a space for black men to feel comfortable just talking. Our mental wellness campaign in 2023 focused on It's Okay to Talk. The African American Male Wellness Agency, we pride ourselves on holistically supporting African American men and their families in some critical areas. We are known for our health and wellness work, but we realize that there is a serious connection in between the physical health and the mental health. And so our brothers are in need of having somebody they can have a conversation with. So our Real Men Real Talk is literally saving lives too. And so we do this conversation nationally in about 8 to 9 cities on a monthly basis. But this podcast is an opportunity for JG and I to have, I would say, a more intimate conversation with some other brothers, right? And so we can really expose some things that we know that men are dealing with, but give them some practical, solutions and some tips. And so this year we're talking about taking our mask off. We're talking about mask off, where we're identifying nationally things that we're masking with, but then we're also identifying what's behind that mask.
Right.
And brothers across this country literally are breaking the chains of depression, ego, lack of self-esteem, all these things that men were masking with, and it's allowing them to live their authentic selves. And so for you, you share the things that you have been able to accomplish, but there were some critical things that I think that align with JG talks about a lot is hard work, working hard, grinding.
Yeah.
There's a sense of entitlement out there amongst the black man, and I want us to really kind of talk a little bit about that, because you get, like, life works when you work is what Mr. Gregory says all the time with the NCUS way. Life works when you work. So you said you wanted some things, you started working towards them.
Yep.
I want to go a little deeper than that.
Okay.
This is mental wellness.
It is.
So I really want London, in order for you to get where you got, when did you start taking your mask off? Or do you still have your mask on?
Wow, that's an interesting question. But let me go back and say, JG, I grew up in a household where I had a black father who said it's okay to be vulnerable as a black man. And that wasn't like, I can't say that was something I saw a lot, because there were a lot of times you go places and, growing up, you would be told, black men don't, you don't show any vulnerability. You don't cry. You don't show emotion. You don't say I love you. You don't, hug another uncle or cousin or whatever to show love. And so I think growing up, I learned that it was okay to be vulnerable. But then growing up and growing older, I think I retreated back within myself, because the way the world system is set up, it's not as easy for a black man to just feel like you can just go out and be your authentic self, because oftentimes when you go places, you might be the only one in the room. And so a lot of times you're reading the room to understand, like, okay, let me find out where I fit in. Let me understand what's the background of what's going on. Because in some cases you fear judgment, because you've seen so many instances in your life where you've been judged by the color of your skin, that a lot of times you find yourself retreating to yourself and almost like losing your voice and your space where you shouldn't. And so for me, I would say it was probably, I started like once I graduated college and I started feeling encouraged, and then I would retreat back to my shell somewhat because of the environments that I was working in. But then later in life, after finishing my PhD, I really felt like, you know what, you've done something that only few have done. So in the African American community, there's still less than 5% of African Americans with a PhD degree. So you can stand up and say, I've done something, I don't want to say the word I belong here, but you feel like you have earned the stripes, and now you don't have to, you don't have to back down from anything. You belong here, and convince yourself that you do. But I can't say that was always there. It started, but every now and then things would happen in the world around you, in your environment, that make you retreat back to say, at the end of the day, you gotta be mindful that you're still a black man. And the world doesn't necessarily see you for your capabilities and your ability. In many cases, you'll be seen as just a black man.
Tell me this, like for me, because I grew up in mostly a white neighborhood, I always got nervous around black people. Because, they always like, you talk white, you act white. So when I got in a room full of black people, I would be like, oh my God, I gotta be with these people. But Has there ever been a moment in your life where you really felt like you didn't want to be who you were?
No, I can honestly say never, because, and I keep going back to the humble beginnings, because my parents instilled in me that I was perfect, because God created me in His image, and He made no mistakes. So however God creates you, I feel like.
Well, now that's why we.
What was that?
That's why we get London.
But I seriously feel like
It's
that.
perfect now.
Oh, whatever. No. Perfectly imperfect. How about that?
I like that.
But I do feel that, when you have that from the very beginning, and, my father used to always say, you're given one last name, don't mess it up. Respect yourself and keep your good name. And so I hold on to that. And so growing up, we always remember, keep your good name. Your name means something. And so you don't have anything to, retreat to fear over, because God created you in His image. He made no mistakes when He created you. And so I'm a firm believer of that.
Ever been depressed?
No, I can't say I've ever been depressed, but what I will say is early in life, I was misdiagnosed. And I later found out that I was having seizures, but it didn't start out that way. And it was because the physician, a neurologist, never ordered the right test. And so my parents would constantly say, taking this kid to the emergency room almost every week, every other week, something is wrong, something is not right. And the doctor kept saying, no, this medication is the right medication. We later learned that medication was an antidepressant. So it forced me to become a little more withdrawn, because I was constantly, having headaches, I would have blackout spells, I would have seizures. And so the antidepressant would, in a sense, calm down some of the hyperexcitability. So although I've never been depressed, I felt like I was withdrawn from friends in the world to some degree. And so I grew out of it and finally got to a clinician who realized what I was really facing, and I was able to get on a medication to treat the condition. And so that's when I felt like I was ready to thrive again. But clinically depressed, I can't say that I've ever been clinically depressed.
So if you say that you've never been clinically depressed, then so my question would be, how are you able to kind of keep yourself away from that pull? Because it's there's so many things that pull Black men towards just being flat out just down and beat up and saying, I'm in a rut.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you're doing that can keep you resisting that and keep you away from it?
Yeah, and let me just get back to there isn't like a perfect situation. So the key word was, I've never been clinically depressed.
Correct.
But you can't, I don't think that there's anyone walking the earth that can say that every day is perfect and that you've not had ups and downs, and I've had those. Mm-hmm. So I can't say that.
Let's talk about one of your downs.
What was that?
Let's talk about one of your downs.
Yeah, so I can say maybe one of my downs, and I know Kenny, Mr. Working to not be a perfectionist, will understand this, where you feel like you didn't show up as your best self, and that you internally, because you compete with yourself, you feel like you missed the mark on certain things, right? And so with that, I've had times where I would question, like, why didn't I think about this, or why didn't I do this? Why did I take this path versus that path? And so that can lead to some downs, but I'm quickly reminded just through my faith that, you know what, there's going to be trials, there are going to be tribulations in life, and where you are right now is not where you need to stay. And so I constantly find ways to pray through a situation. I find ways to get out and do something that makes me feel good, whether it's exercise or walking or listening to music or whatever. I try to find something to get me out of that slump that I'm in. And it's not saying that it's always easy, but I do find things that will help me move beyond the space that I'm in, because I know that's not where I want to be or I want to stay.
So you have an ability to tell yourself, nah, I'm not going to stay here.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
But it's not always been that way.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. And to be in a space now where you're able to do that, do you find yourself sharing that with other brothers?
I've definitely shared it with other brothers because I think that's what we're charged to do. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I'll look and I'm, in communication with several people and I'll talk to them about, hey, what's going on in life or whatever, and just try to motivate them past that moment. And doing that, it causes me to lift myself up. And there are times that, in talking to someone, you don't even realize internally that, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought about it that way, or I never knew that I was suffering from that, and just talking it out and hearing it come back from someone else asking you questions of what did you do, and me asking them questions like, how did you navigate this? I'm learning as well. So I look at it as a two-way, sort of like bi-directional, like as much as I try to give, I try to also get, because I feel like I can learn from the least of a person.
Let me ask you this. We was in Memphis and a brother came in and he was devastated. Out of nowhere, his girlfriend called him up and said she no longer wanted to be with him. And so he was walking around in his apartment with a gun in his hand, trying to think in terms of whether or not he should take his life. Have you ever been that in love and broke up with somebody who felt like that?
No. I've never been in that place, but I could see how maybe some people could be. I think, love is a serious commitment, and for some of us, some people pour their all into a love relationship, and I wouldn't tell anybody, what to think, feel, or how to react. You just pray that there's enough in them to make them feel like life is worth living, that they have fewer or none of those moments is my hope.
That's interesting. There's a lot of men that they find themselves giving so much, but then when they're met with a situation like that, they have nothing in the tank to kind of fall back on.
Yeah.
And so it really speaks to how you're moving and how you're living, because you're protecting yourself from someone ever being able to have that kind of power over your life.
Yeah.
And that's deep, because oftentimes it's the other way around, and folks are in those spaces where they're like, I'm done. I'm throwing in the towel. I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. But I think that it's important for men to really understand that we talk about it all the time when we fly. The first thing they say is, when they're going through safety protocols, is to put your mask on first. And a lot of brothers are out here providing oxygen to so many other people. Yeah. But in the state of an emergency, that is not the best approach. The best approach is for you to take care of yourself. Yeah. And if you don't put your oxygen mask on first, you're gonna find yourself, in a tough situation. And so I really want to encourage men to dig a little deeper. I know that there's a desire for companionship. There's a desire to have that connection with someone else. But you always got to prioritize. You got to place you first. You got to be selfish in that space.
Yeah, and it's not easy.
It's not, especially when you try to be a servant leader, yeah, and you're trying to be this, selfless person. You have to be selfish. Yeah, and it's okay to be selfish.
Yeah, and I know I've struggled with that at times. It's like being selfish and feeling like, let me take care of me first, because, like you said, a lot of times in families, when you feel like you can help and you're a giver anyway, right? Yeah. You just extend, and then sometimes you're like, wow, who's gonna check up on me? And you feel like there are times that you feel like you're by yourself and that you're alone. So yep. I can understand it, because I think as a generation, a lot of times black men carry a lot of weight. We carry a lot of weight.
Invisible weight is what we're carrying. And that's the part that a lot of folks don't understand. it's not even visible.
Yeah.
You don't even see us right now. We're walking around with just all this weight on our shoulders.
Absolutely.
Every single day.
Yeah.
And we have to be mindful that some of that weight doesn't belong on our shoulders.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If not, most of it probably don't belong on our shoulders. But because of who we are, we try to be that person and fill all those voids in the lives of others and plug those holes in the lives of others. We are not able to, I would say, live up to our maximum potential because we're so consumed with pouring, and most of us are pouring from an empty cup.
Yeah. And most people are poor because they see that about themselves. I think that a lot of times people are doing things because they want that to define who they are. That's
I agree.
Really, I think people do get caught up in this so they can say, well, I'm this, I'm that.
It's for that ego.
It's that ego.
I'll admit to that. Like I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
You know, you fight that ego. Then what about, now, you know, you might not want to be on tape talking about your ego, but you ever have...
Me or him?
No. I already know you got ego battles.
Ego battles.
So talk to me about what your ego battles are.
Wow. And I think,
it's okay. It's safe.
I think Kenny hit it earlier. I mean, you go through life, and mine was, you know, trying to be a perfectionist. And I'm still learning that it's okay to be imperfect. And that
maybe
becomes
I should try a 12-step program.
You know what? We every time we cross paths, we find out a little bit more about the connection that we got, and so I think that is a good idea for us to talk more about that because unfortunately, when we do disclose that in Men Real Talks, a lot of men connect with it.
Yeah.
And they confess, I'm dealing with that too.
Yeah.
But it's not really popular conversation.
It's not a popular conversation, but it is a much needed conversation because I can tell you there have been times that, you know, I'll go places, I'll do things, and people are like, oh, that was great. And in my mind, it was like horrible, or I'm feeling like I missed the mark on this, or just doing things in life. You feel like you're constantly missing the mark. And so you beat yourself up. Mm-hmm. And so, and I am guilty of that. And I do it quite a bit, and I'm trying to get better at it. Mm-hmm. Every time I hear you talk about it, you know, it makes me like just start digging a little deeper within myself, and even others talk about it. And I try to find ways to say, let me not do anything where I'm like trying to check all of the boxes on everything, and just see that it's going to be okay. And that becomes somewhat of a struggle.
It does.
Right? Because you want to, I don't want to say control everything, but you want to.
So let me ask y'all that. Is it about controlling everything?
I knew it was going to go there.
What is it about? I mean, because I can't identify with that. Either that, like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I ain't never had a perfectionist syndrome. And maybe it's because I think I do everything perfect. But, because it sounds like it's such a deep, is it about control? Is it about how people see you? What do you think it is about?
It's definitely not about control for me.
Me neither.
I think it's more so like you set this goal for yourself of how you want to show up.
That's it.
And so when you set that goal for yourself, these are your personal goals. You're competing against the goals that you set for yourself. Others may see the goals that you set for yourself as exponential. But the goals that you set for yourself are sometimes unattainable. They are just not real. Yep. And so that then becomes like an internal struggle, and you got to learn to just let it go. Because like I'm sitting here right now, it's like, should I have said it this way? Should I have said it that way? And in your mind, that becomes one of those things because you're constantly trying to show up and get things right all the time. And it's okay to just say, whew, I'm okay. Let me, take my shoes off and just have a conversation. I don't have to, feel like I'm perfectly dressed or whatever. And I'm learning that those moments need to happen more than the moments where you look like you're buttoned all the way up. Because that's when people see the real you.
I'm so glad you just said that, because just in this moment, I had to deal with not being perfect. The suit that I'm wearing today does not fit me the way that I thought the tailor would have cut it up, right? And I struggled this morning putting it on, not feeling 100%, but I said today I'm going to walk in this imperfection. I'm not going to allow perfectionism to win today because I don't want it to spill into something else today. So I'm thinking, you know what? To others, the suit looks amazing. To me, I am irritated at the way this thing fit. But you know what? I'm giving myself permission to say it's okay to be flawed. It's okay to be imperfect. Because here's the thing, perfect is not even obtainable. So why should I beat myself up over trying to get 100% or an A+ every single time I do something? It's just not even possible. I played baseball for 25 years of my life, and you are successful being unsuccessful 7 times out of 10, and folks are making millions of dollars in that sport doing that. I got a scholarship in baseball, and of all sports, you would have thought that it would have been something different because it's like, wait a minute, so you can deal with being imperfect, Kenny. You deal with failure a lot in baseball, but then you battle with being a perfectionist? Why does that even happen? But I agree with you, it's because of the battle amongst ourselves internally. And overthinking it can put you in a paralysis state.
So I would say to the brothers that are listening to this is that you got a case here with 2 black men, college educated. I can't see them, so I think they're decent looking. Talking about being imperfect and being perfectionist and struggling with that. And I would say to the brothers out there that's dealing with it, that it's real.
It is.
And that you need to find another brother that you can talk to about, because it sounds like it needs to be something you talk through.
You definitely gotta talk.
What would be some points that you would give some brothers out there to get through that? Because it seemed like you would get stuck. I know at one point you were stuck.
Yes.
Have you ever been stuck, London?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I could share anything with the brothers is, accountability is one thing that I think a lot of people who try to be a perfectionist, you start with that and you struggle with that. But I think the thing that we have to do is we have to spend more time in things that we haven't done as well and be okay with it. And be able to relax, relate, and release, right? Like get the things out of your head that nothing is going to be perfect. And when you go into something, and so I've started trying to do more of that. When I get a task, if I'm going somewhere to talk or speak or whatever, I try to tell myself, just be you, and that's okay. And let that be good enough. Don't try to go up and have everything button tight, every citation, every this, every that. Just be real, because I think that's what people want to see. Is they want to see the real you before they can see you show up and look like you got it all together. Because looking at someone who looks like they got it all together, chances are they don't. And that's okay. So don't look at me externally and think that the suit, the shoes, or whatever, and lifestyle roles at work, all these different things seem to align with what you might call perfection, or this brother got it going on. Realize till you get to know the inside of that person, you'll start finding the broken pieces in their lives, the things that have helped either mold them to be who they are, and where maybe they've had some of their most disappointing struggles. And that's the real person that you want to see. Because showing up as that perfectionist, what I've learned is it becomes a false narrative that you're putting out there for people, and you unintentionally, you're not trying to do it, right? And I think it goes back to everything that defines you as a person. I grew up and primarily went to predominantly white schools where the African American population was there, but it wasn't the dominant. And so it was always this spirit of competing, right? When I went to college, undergrad, I didn't go to an HBCU. I went to a white college where the percentage of African Americans were low. So you're always feeling like you got to compete. And so for me, growing up without computers in the home and having the old encyclopedias. A lot of the information I was looking at was probably dated. So for me, I always felt like if there was someone else that I was competing against to get good grades, I had to go a step further. So I think that's where some of that started, and I just never let go of it. But I'm telling you, you will kill yourself trying to be a perfectionist. And I've learned that in my work life and in my personal life, that I've got to let things go. And that's what I would say is, you got to just learn what can you let go, because you can't hold 100% of everything you're carrying.
And for me, mine is movement. You got to move, because the longer you stay stuck, things should be flowing through us. And I've allowed my struggles with perfectionism to slow things down, and for things and lives to not be impacted because of my inability to be imperfect in an email, or be imperfect in a speech or talk, because I'm overthinking it. So execute, move, and allow yourself to be okay with not being perfect. Like today, threw the suit on, didn't like the way it fit. I said, I'm gonna keep pressing forward, because I need to get comfortable in knowing I'm still gonna show up, I'm still gonna execute, but I don't have to always be 100%.
I can tell that suit is sharp. So.
Thanks, man.
And you're wearing it well.
So I think that to the brothers that are tuned in, and to anybody who's listening, actually, to me this is really an important topic, is that we have two brothers here, like I said, extremely successful, dressed very nice all the time, and for something inside of their head, it tells them it's not okay. And what I would say is that if this is something you're struggling with, that you really need to get some assistance from another brother who's struggling with it, and ask them how they get through it. And so London and Kenny are always available through the African American Male Wellness information piece that we can give you. And can you tell them how they can get a hold of us, or they're going to call you and talk about being a perfectionist?
Absolutely. So our information is out there at aawellness.org. You can reach out to us. We also have a Facebook group, Real Men Real Talk. You can follow us on all the social media platforms, AA Wellness Agency. Hit us up. We respond to the DMs. We engage with our men on a daily basis. Our Real Men Real Talk community is growing by the minute. Brothers are being able to have a safe space to break away from the day-to-day hustle and bustle, just to bounce some things off of other brothers. You know, how you and I'm sure there's some brothers that's watching this and is going to listen to this, and they're going to say, man, I can finally connect with somebody else that's struggling with being a perfectionist. Because it's something that is unseen. It's definitely an internal thing, but I'm glad that we now have this platform to raise awareness in that space. And hey, hit us up and we will respond to you. We're excited to be able to even have you in the fold as we grow and we walk this walk together. All right, till next time.
Till next time. To the perfectionists.
I can't wear this mask any longer. I don't feel I'm getting stronger. Had it on so long, I don't recognize who I am.